Good. Welcome everybody to what is ultimately quite a historic time for Barbershop Harmony Australia as we head towards our AGM coming up on the 14th of December. That's in a month's time. We're holding a town hall this afternoon to discuss a couple of major things that will be discussed at that AGM and voted upon by the membership. So what I'm going to do is basically talk you through the journey so far and talk about some of the changes that we're proposing for the BHA constitution. And let's get into it. At the end of this, there'll be a question and answer session. If you need to use the question and answer function in the Zoom webinar that you are attending, you'll find that down the bottom of your screen, and you can type those questions in and they'll get answered to the best of our ability at the end of this session. So let's launch in. Over the past 4 years, the Barbershop Harmony Australia National Council has driven a series of deep and searching discussions around the future of the association and its membership. During this time, the National Council has facilitated surveys, discussions and forums, and has heard from members, both voting and non-voting, of the hopes, fears, frustrations and aspirations that members hold for their organisation and the barbershop style that it promotes. At the 2020 AGM, a significant milestone was achieved with the in-principle agreement to move to a new future that had been and continues to be described and debated during the consultative process. The motions voted upon at the 2020 AGM were underpinned by explanatory notes, which form a critical reference point for the authentic implementation of any changes moving forward. The explanatory notes are specific in referencing what would be pursued under the motions and the future of BHA. They were developed based on a significant survey of full and associate members, the results of which were presented to national and regional forums and subject to an extensive consultation process with the membership. The 2020 AGM explanatory notes stated that during 2020, all members had the opportunity to have their say about future directions for BHA. The following key themes were identified. A, the majority support the move to an inclusive membership association. B, clubs must have a choice to determine what groups they wish to facilitate. C, members should have equal voting rights. D, the governance of BHA should remain as one council for all. E, at this time, traditional gender groupings are strongly supported. F, open is both fully inclusive grouping and a category of subgroupings. G, competitions with full subcategories are supported for all gender mixes. H, attracting youth is critical. And I, encouraging men to sing is still a thing, regardless of the membership. Now, at the 2020 AGM, the BHA Council tested that these themes were well supported by members and put forth critical motions with regards to membership eligibility. These motions focused on membership, inclusion, voting rights, and competition, the failure of which would have effectively determined that the National Council did not have a mandate to move forward to open membership. At the 2020 AGM, it was noted that the results were not binding, that they only gave the BHA Council an indication of support. All votes were cast on the basis of this explanation, both for and against. Now, those motions received positive support. And so the National Council has moved forward to develop constitutional, standing order and policy modifications to facilitate changes to membership, inclusion, voting rights and competition changes consistent with motions 7, 8, 9 and 10, noting that any proposed constitutional changes will be presented to a special general meeting in 2021. Now, due to the COVID-19 situation impacting the initial timeframe, it was decided to forego that special general meeting and instead present the proposed changes to the regular annual general meeting. And this has allowed us further consultation to continue to authentically implement the changes for the future, noting that once implemented, they're unlikely to see a repeal. The proposed changes to the Constitution have therefore addressed the following items. In responding to explanatory notes A and C, a single form of membership is proposed that is not gender specific, but does allow for a youth membership discount. Furthermore, the term men has been removed from the name of the association. In responding to explanatory note H, a youth membership discount is provided for within the single form of membership. In responding to explanatory note B, the Constitution does not prescribe any requirement for member clubs to include nor exclude any groupings that they wish to pursue. In responding to explanatory note D, no change has been proposed for the National Council structure. In responding to explanatory notes E, F, and G, standing orders remain in place to facilitate events and competitions with subgroups. In responding to explanatory note I and A new power has been included to promote the participation within Australia of identifying males and other demographically underrepresented sections of Australian society in singing, with specific reference to the barbershop style. Now, the BHA Council is again taking this opportunity to stress that there is no requirement for any member clubs to include nor exclude any groupings that they wish to pursue should the proposed changes be endorsed by the membership. Male-only clubs can remain male-only clubs should they wish to do so. There is no expectation or anticipation that any clubs will be forced to change their current membership composition. The changes are simply being made to enable those who wish to support barbershop in their communities in any way that they wish to do so, to be supported by an inclusive association of people who share the joy of four-part harmony in the barbershop style. The National Council firmly believes that the proposed changes to be authentically within the spirit of the extensive consultation process, respectful of the history of the association, and congruent with the objectives of the current BHA stated purpose of enriching Australia through harmony. So now to an explanation of the changes. The changes focus on membership, inclusion, voting rights and competition, and they relate to those special motions passed at the 2020 BHA AGM relating to opening up the membership to all people, which was motion 7, moving towards equal voting rights for all members, which was motion 8, BHA continuing with the principle of governance remaining as one council for all, motion 9, changing the association name from AAMBS, or the Australian Association of Men Barbershop Singers, to Barbershop Harmony Australia, which was motion 10, and National Council preparing constitutional standing order and policy modifications consistent with the above motions, which was motion 11. In making these changes, especially for motion 10, it was recognised that there were a number of technical changes to be made to bring the Constitution in line with modern practice and to provide a clearer structure to the reader. These changes are marked up in a draft Constitution, which will be sent out shortly after this meeting. Now, specifically, some of those changes include changing the title of the current Constitution from the Constitution of AAMBS to the Rules of Barbershop Harmony Australia. Headers and footers in the document changed to remove references to AMS, replacing them with BHA. We've removed the reference to trading as Barbershop Harmony Australia. We've included the association's registration number under the Associations Incorporation Act 2015 Western Australia. And this is required because BHA is a registered association founded in Western Australia. We've referenced the definition of barbershop harmony, and we've changed that from a footnote to an annex to the Constitution. The inclusion of a definitions clause in the rules, which is Rule 20, relocating various definitions to provide clarity to the rules. We've changed references to paragraphs in the Constitution to rules. We've changed the second paragraph of Rule 16 to a note rather than a rule, as that's a requirement of the Act. We've removed redundant rule titles for Rules 18.1 and 18.2. The definition in Rule 19 has been moved to Rule 20, and Rules 19C, D, and E have been renumbered to Rules 19A, B, and C. The motions 7, 8, and 9 require minimal changes to Rule 5. So Rule 5A to read, full membership of the association is open to any person who is in sympathy with the objects of the association. All full members are entitled to vote on and participate in the management of the association. Rule 5B is going to be deleted. It refers to the associate member classification, which was originally established to provide insurance cover by supporters of BHA, its clubs and its choruses under the original insurance policy. And this policy was changed some time ago to provide cover for volunteers at all levels. With the move to full membership for all, the membership class of associate members becomes redundant and references to it have therefore been removed. There's a note that volunteers do not have to be members of BHA, but would not be able to vote or sing in a BHA-related competition. If they take out membership, it would be as full members and all that entails. So all of those changes outlined above are shown in the marked up constitution that will be sent out, as well as a clean copy of the constitution that will be shortly sent out. So that's basically the context of our discussion today. And what we might do now is head on over to the question and answer session and see if there's anyone who'd like some more information on any of that. And while we're waiting for that, Paul Adams, our Vice President Membership, has been working hard behind the scenes to make sure that the consultation processes were robust, to make sure that we've gathered as much intelligence and information as we can from our members. But Paul, you might have a few more words about some of the process that was used to come up with the changes to the Constitution and where we're going to head from here.
Thanks, Dan. Look, it feels like it's been going on for a long time, doesn't it? We know that there's been discussions on this at various BHA forums leading up to 2019. But the real momentum, I think, has occurred since that time, and it really kicked off with some conversations at the 2019 Hobart Festival. We were then able to work through a really detailed change plan, and that particularly included gathering information from members in the way of a survey. And that really set up a conversation. And I think it's really important to understand that the survey was just the first part of this. The conversation then continued with a range of different clubs, chairmen, individual members around a range of different challenges, concerns, excitement, fear, which we really had to have quite a detailed dialogue with. We all know what happened with the pandemic, and certainly that has not been in any way assisted our process to move forward. But it has given us a chance for some deep reflection. And what we found after the first 12 months was a number of people who still we felt hadn't fully engaged with a full understanding of what was about. Therefore, the AGM in 2020 was about really saying, look, this is now the pivotal moment that we need to move forward. That did create further conversations. It did create feedback, which we got where people were really able to dive deeper into what is their concerns or their excitement about this. And ultimately, what we've tried to do is to then build a constitution and a series of rules which are always authentic, particularly to the original concerns that were raised around inclusiveness, particularly responded to all of the motions and particularly that explanatory note, which was really a position on where we sit, and that now we've got a constitution which can go to the members as a document that we can say, look, this is the way forward for the organisation. Should that constitution be voted in, then I think our new world begins, our new environment begins in earnest. And there'll be changes over time, we understand that, but it will set a new foundation for the organisation, and one which, on the basis of the information we've had so far, majority of people are generally supportive of. So that will be tested at the AGM. Thanks, Dan. Mute.
You're muted, Dan.
Don't y'all love that when somebody does that? My apologies. Thanks, Paul. Really good. We've got a couple of questions that have come in here. Just to confirm that the AGM will be held on the evening of December the 14th. A link will be coming out. You've probably already got that invite in your inbox, so I encourage you to check your emails. And when the formal notification goes out further with the link inside it, of course, that will contain the marked up copy of the Constitution, the explanatory notes, and the accompanying paperwork that you need to be able to have a look at those things. There's already Also an email out to all members calling for nominations to council and any special motions that may wish to be put at that annual general meeting. That email came out, I believe, on Thursday or Friday last week. Kai McIntosh has an excellent question about why minimal notice was given for today's town hall. You have sincere apologies for that. In getting everyone together, that did take a little longer than anticipated. We also wanted to make sure that the paperwork that we're about to send out is all absolutely the best that we can do. And so we do apologise for that. Of course, over the next few weeks before the AGM, we have another 4 weeks to go. Feel free to provide your feedback and comments directly to me, and they will be taken on board, I promise you. So again, apologies for that little glitch. We've had a few of our BHA team members who've been indisposed, and so we've been scrambling a little bit to try and get this on board. We ask your forgiveness. We are all volunteers who are doing our very best, and we recognise that some of these timeframes weren't ideal. So my apologies for that. Robert, the notice of AGM, I'll make sure that goes out. All right. Unfortunately, I can't really move that. We are mandated to hold that in a certain time frame, and so it's going to be on that evening of the 14th of December. Notice of AGM goes out after the opportunity for nominations. Very good reminder. Thank you, Trevor. So the email that Jeannie Hattendorf, our BHA admin guru, has sent out is calling for nominations and any special motions that will be put to the AGM. And once they are received, then the formal notice goes out. So just by way of process, that probably explains why you haven't yet received the formal notice of AGM, because there's still a little bit that falls with you guys to get back to us about that, the contents of that meeting. Good. Alex, hello, mate. Will there be capacity for an electronic vote ahead of the AGM? I believe the answer to that is yes. Rob, Lee, you might have a little bit, have you had a conversation with our people about the capacity for electronic votes?
We had electronic voting last year. I see no reason why we shouldn't have it this year.
I'd certainly be pushing that angle. I think it makes a lot of sense that this is all online, particularly given that some clubs still aren't back together again yet, or are still restricted a little by COVID. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. Thank you. 4 questions in the other area. Great. Anonymous, confirming that removing gender-based membership is already decided. It's now a matter of how. So this is exactly what we're talking about today. Are the changes to the Constitution is the how. Paul, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, so the proposals are consistent with the 2020 AGM, and that was the move towards full inclusiveness. And that membership would then be, we believe, is actually enshrined in what the new Constitution draft provides. That is the intent of the new Constitution draft. If someone reads it and says, I don't think it tells me that, well, that's great, let us know. But we're pretty confident that the removal of men as a specific category of membership is facilitating exactly that it will be open to all people.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Hope that answers your question happily enough for you. Another anonymous question here. To remind us of the status of contest rules, please. Separate mixed categories or one open contest. So I guess the intention is, look, this is going to be a little bit of a work in progress. We're not going to finalise absolutely everything right now, but the intention is certainly that we would continue with the mandate that we have from the voting and feedback that we've received so far, in that the membership has indicated that separate contests are still important to them. One of the changes that we will probably be looking at is, as well as having men's, women's and mixed categories and the things contained within those. So we would potentially have seniors, youth and neither seniors nor youth. But we would then be potentially looking to have an open champion, which would be the highest scoring group of the day for that contest, rather than having open champion, meaning highest scoring men's quartet, as it has traditionally done. So we'd just be looking to change a little bit of that language, and certainly recognising that the best in Australian barbershop should be recognised as the best in Australian barbershop, regardless of who that group is. So I hope that answers your question. Kai asks, can current associate members nominate for National Council if they intend to become full financial members, when hopefully they are able to do? And the answer, I believe, would be yes. However, at this stage, in order to nominate, you need to be a full member of. So this is a little something I hadn't thought about specifically. Paul, do you have comments on this?
Unfortunately, the status of associate members doesn't change until the full membership votes for the new constitution. And so from a timing perspective, we're probably in a situation where if we're absolutely true to the constitution and the rules as they currently sit, that probably wouldn't be allowed. Our current associate members are not able to be members of council nor full members. A timing issue, which would be difficult to work past.
Yeah, I guess if there's any silver lining to that, is that there are council elections every single year, and those positions do become vacant every single year. And so hopefully that gives you a little bit of hope that it won't be too long. Believe me, a year goes very fast. This whole process has shown me just how fast time can get away. So,
and I'll just make the point, that's not me trying to be legalistic or trying to hold back the tide or anything like that. It's just, I mean, that's the fundamental issue associated with what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a fundamental change in the way the organisation operates going forward.
Yeah, I do want to reassure you too that there's no background deals or anything going on where we wish to exclude that occurring. As far as the timing goes, it's just unfortunate that this process took a little longer than we wanted it to, but it's also been great because of the depth of feedback that we've received during that process, I guess. So yeah, not ideal if you are an associate member wishing to run for council, but the good news is you don't have to wait too long. Pete Frager, g'day mate, how are you? Is there any feedback from the submissions made? And I guess this is a great question. The feedback has been discussed throughout various forums, in various emails and notifications out to the membership, and certainly is included in the explanatory memorandum. But Paul, do you want to talk about the way that we used that feedback from the submissions? I mean, a lot of it was, we relied heavily on the data from those submissions, but you've probably got some more sensible comments, my friend.
So the feedback has been taken into account and has been shared with every member of National Council. Every piece of information that came in was shared with the National Council, and they have both individually and collectively taken that into account in shaping up the new rules and shaping up the new constitution and thinking forward for the organisation and how it will look at. Some of the information, some of the feedback, it varies. It varies from absolutely supportive through to please don't change my association. We understand that this is always going to be a conversation with our members and with those who are particularly interested in our future. What we've tried to do, as we've said, and Dan went through the notes that will form the explanatory notes for this future decision, we've tried to be really authentic to the themes that have come through. And that means that there may be some people who will go, this has gone far enough. There might be others that say this has gone too far. What we've really tried to do is to focus on what is the overall telling us and how do we move forward in a way which allows us to embrace the future of this association and whatever it looks like.
Thanks, Paul. Hopefully that answers your question. Just knocking over to the chat line here where Robert makes the comment about, can the voting be done ahead of the AGM, given that our club's members will be at a Christmas function? Yes, it can. Quite simple. It will be open as soon as we need to tally them before the meeting. So hope that answers your question there. Good. Do we have any more questions coming in? Good. While we're waiting, I might just take this opportunity to remind you that we are still planning as an association to go ahead with the National Convention next year, which will be a lot of fun. We're planning on heading to New Zealand to have both an Australian contest, a New Zealand contest, and a Pan-Pacific contest. And so there's going to be a bit of fun happening over the next few months while we determine exactly how that's going to happen and how that's going to look. I guess one of the exciting things is that we will pretty much be aligned with BHNZ for the first time, who opened up their membership completely a little while ago. And so it's going to be much easier for us to compare apples and apples when we head across the ditch to have a bit of a sing together. And won't that be a lovely thing when that can happen? We're talking about September next year, so we're anticipating that things like COVID passports and travel bubbles and all that sort of stuff might be a little bit of a worry of the past, and we're hoping that that's all full steam ahead. So start thinking about that, heading across to Auckland, New Zealand in September 2022 for a Pan-Pacific. Good. Another question here. What lessons are being learned from BHS or other national associations? Is the BHS meeting in December about the Everyone in Harmony way forward? I can't specifically answer questions on behalf of BHS and what the intentions of their meeting in December is all about. But what I can add is that, it's certainly one of the main lessons that BHA has learned from BHS and other national associations is making absolutely sure that both our membership and the leadership of our clubs are fully informed about what these changes may mean or may not mean for each of them. And I think one of the key lessons that was learned from the introduction of Everyone in Harmony in the United States was that it gave the appearance of being introduced very much faster than a lot of the club leaderships were ready for. There was a little flurry of excitement as everyone piled into local clubs and choruses that just weren't quite ready or hadn't even thought about making any changes to the way that they operated. So we've tried to learn from that, certainly here in Australia, where we have given members and clubs and leadership of all of those musical groups as much opportunity as possible over the last 2.5 years to be fully engaged and to provide their feedback and thoughts around that process. Paul, do you have any other comments on that?
I think that's a good summary, Dan. I mean, there were certainly clubs in the US who were taken a little bit by surprise and hadn't had a chance to prepare themselves. I don't think any of our clubs here could possibly suggest now that they haven't had the chance to be fully informed of what the future may look like. That will go to a vote. The vote will then determine what that means for our association. And we've been quite clear, clubs must maintain their own decisions in this space. We are trying to facilitate something which has been called for at an association level. And now a range of clubs have already signalled some great opportunities for growth in terms of BHA, which I think we're looking forward to. As long as we're achieving those things, like being relevant and getting out in communities and growing youth and supporting the perpetuation of this style and supporting the perpetuation of the singing arts, choral arts, amongst all of those groups who at this stage are completely underrepresented. I think that's a great way forward for this association, and that's certainly what has been what has come out of all of the consultation and what we've tried to authentically capture in the changes to the Constitution.
Thanks. And look, I might skip across here to Richard Waddick, who's our VP Events. And of course, he's been the brainchild behind some of the expanded activities that we have seen throughout our national festivals. And Richard, we were talking before about the changes to contests and things like that, but I think, you've already voiced some nice ideas around more inclusive community involvement in some of these regional festivals and national festivals.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, look, we certainly, after our inaugural festival in Hobart, well, now over 2 years ago, that's gone quick. We're certainly looking at expanding on the more inclusive activities that we launched there. So and that that's not only expanding on opportunities for our own members, but also members of the local communities where we're holding our events. So, and I mean, next year, as Dan said, we're planning to head over to Auckland for the Pan Pacific. It's largely, well, I guess it's a BHNZ hosted event, but BHA is very much part of it, as are other entities across the Pacific Rim. So we're all involved, and I'm certainly discussing with the team in New Zealand about introducing at least some of the festival activities that we know and love over the last 10 years or so, but perhaps even some of the more recent activities we've introduced.
Thank you,
So,
Richard.
watch this space.
Thanks, Richard. We might head down to our chairman of the Australian Guild of Barbershop Judges, who's largely in control of a lot of the contest and judging aspects of the things that we do around Australia. Ian, there are a couple of considerations that are going to be made for the upcoming New Zealand convention, as an example, where, given the potential to have more members in more categories, should the membership go ahead and vote that way at the AGM, we may need to expand the timeframes of some of these events.
Thanks, Dan. Well, obviously, at this point of time, we don't really know until we know the number of entries. But certainly, with expanding the contest categories, there is the potential to need more time. I suspect, realistically, with this first post-COVID convention, that's probably not going to be an issue for us. But yeah, we certainly will be looking at expanding all of the categories as you have discussed and put in your explanatory note. And the other thing that we normally do with a Pan Pack is we try to align our contest rules with New Zealand so that we have one common set of contest rules. Now, sometimes each association has slightly different awards that they want to give, but basically the categories are going to be similar, and obviously the judging is all done by the same panel and it's done on the same basis. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. That's good. That's good. Just jumping back into the questions, Kai, you've asked, will constitutional changes, if accepted, take immediate effect at the AGM, or will there be a delay for ratification? The answer for that is strictly governed by the regulations under which we operate as an associated body. And so we need to provide evidence of the voting and evidence of, like, by way of the minutes of the AGM to the Western Australian Department of Commerce, who are responsible for that legislation. And it needs to be lodged with them and then accepted by them before it comes into place. And generally that will be, sometime after the AGM. We're at the mercy of a government department there, so I'm not going to give you a distinct time frame here, but it would be, reasonably within 28 days or so of that AGM is when that would normally occur, from the time that we lodge those documents to change our constitution with that department. So I hope that answers your question. If it was up to us, we would probably make things happen a whole lot faster, but yep, there's rules and regulations in place for that. Anonymous asks, if there are not mixed male-female categories, what is the role for youth and seniors categories? So I think there will still be mixed male and female categories. I'm not sure where the question's coming from there. What is the role for youth and seniors? Again, this enables us to target youth. We know that this is something that was mandated in the 2020 AGM, that youth, a focus on attracting youth to the association is still a primary goal, and we need to maintain that. by having youth categories of contests, it allows youth to compete against each other and compete on an even playing field. Similarly, seniors, for example, in the States, they've kind of split the contests out. So they have 2 conventions each year. One of them is youth focused and the other one is seniors focused. So it kind of gives us the opportunity to maintain those focuses on our existing membership and attracting new membership. I think, is it to recognise disadvantages or inexperienced youth or ageing voice, or is it marketing because youth want to sing with and compete with other people like them, or other reasons? I think you've answered your own question there a little bit. It's for all of those reasons. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We want to give people as many opportunities as possible to do what they love to do. And I think, Ian, do you have any comments on those categories, or did that answer the question, do you think?
Oh, look, I think it probably answers the question. We have youth and seniors contests so that those people can be competing against like competitors, if you like. And I think the theory behind it has always been that perhaps a youth group is not as experienced as an adult group, if you like, who might have many years of experience under their belt, and that might discourage youth from competing. So that's the reason there. Similar with senior groups, perhaps when you do get to your senior years, the voice does start to deteriorate a bit, and again, so that they can be competing against like groups rather than having to be against the full-blown mature adult voices, which can be pretty strong. So that's my understanding of why those categories are there. Perhaps I can go on to the next question, Dan, which is from
Yes.
Richard Gardam regarding the naming of particular contest categories. Where do they come from? And I presume you're talking about or asking a question about why men's versus male, perhaps, why women's versus female. There's no particular reason. It's just that all of the other associations around the world that have already got these categories are calling them men's and women's. And so we would go with that purely to conform with what other countries in the world have done, rather than having male and female, for example, and being the only association that does that. So
yeah.
That's the reason there.
Thanks, Ian. I think, just to provide a bit of an insight too, a great example of the naming conventions for particular categories would have been the recent online experience that we had to have this year because of COVID, where we had a whole stack of quartets who sent stuff in, and then we had a look at all of that stuff as a group and decided what categories could we put people into. So we ended up with things like, best ballad, best up tune, best mixed group. Like we kind of do also have a look at the contest entries at the time and try and make that as fun as possible and as inclusive as possible for people to be able to have fun and compete against like groups. So that's an important kind of naming thing that we do as well. Anonymous asks, is a longer convention seen as a positive, more barbershop, or a negative where people can't take more time off, or both? And I think probably a little bit of both. There's going to be additional events, additional opportunities. For some people, taking time off work might be an issue. For others, they can't get enough barbershop. So we'll try and strike a happy medium there and put as much stuff in there as we can. From an association point of view, a longer convention is obviously a longer chance for us to engage with the local community. And remember, we move from city to city each year. Our festivals are designed specifically to engage with the local community and drive membership for BHA and local clubs and choruses in that area. And so a longer engagement is a positive. But yes, I guess people taking time off might be an issue. We are also moving towards trying to plan these things much further in advance so that people can organise that time off and prioritise their lives so that they get barbershop number one, and then things like jobs and families number two, of course. Barbershop's much more important than everything else in the world, right? So Yep, great question. Great question. Another question here. How is the council going to guarantee the safety and comfort of all new full members as well as past members? Festival is a big event where social problems may occur, and having an event where everyone is safe and comfortable and is obviously a big priority. Would you implement a safety team policy to ensure everyone is comfortable and safe? Look, I think first and foremost, I would make a comment around the fact that one of the things that I have very much enjoyed about my barbershop career over the last 35 years is the immense feeling of safety that, you know, is contained within that barbershop family. It's a very supportive place in the first instance. And I think that, you know, the association that we've built over the years is inclusive. I think there will be some lessons and some, you know, some things to work on. I'll take that comment on board. It's not, Paul, it's not something that we've specifically discussed just yet, other than having things like ambassadors and allies who are able to be on board. But further thoughts on that?
Look, it's a great observation. I mean, we've seen mixed quartets, mixed choruses come into our association, as far as I'm aware, without challenge in terms of being involved. Could this final change, which then becomes actually creates an equality, create a different conversation? Absolutely, it could. I'd love to think that it wouldn't, but we might need to just go and have a look at some of our code of conducts and things like that, just to ensure people are quite clear about what is the behaviours that are expected. We are thankfully in an environment where we rarely see those things not adhered to, but it's a cautionary note. So I'll be making a particular note of that one. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And look, I think too, should the membership go ahead and approve at the AGM that these changes do take place and that we are in that position, I think it would be very wise of us to make sure that all members maybe are even, you know, notified of the code of conduct. Over the years, we've had a couple of people who have breached the code of conduct and been evicted from the association, and we're quite happy to do that. Well, we're not happy, but you know, we're quite able to do that if people don't adhere to the very strict code that we've got, where people be treated with respect. This is, you know, a singing organisation, a family organisation, a rated G organisation, and we will always maintain that code of conduct is immensely important to us. But I think, yeah, good question.
Good observation.
A raft of resources that go out after this AGM, should that be the way the vote goes, would be very useful. Anonymous asks, if the youth category is for inexperience, why not just make it novice category? Wouldn't novice category provide opportunities for the first time performers who are not youth? Nice idea. This is not something that needs to be included in the Constitution, but is certainly something that we can think about when we're constructing future contests. Nice idea. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just looking back at the other screen here. Alex asks, changes of name and objects require approval by the WA Commissioner. Other changes can take effect on lodgement. In either event, it will be after the AGM where votes are taken, so inevitably too late for candidacy and voting, which is a shame. If it was up to the National Council, you could have arranged an SEM ahead of the AGM. Yes, COVID, but a lot of complex functions have still been performed under COVID in other walks of life. Great observation, Alex. Yes, we know that this has not necessarily been perfect timing. Absolutely accept that that's the case. And yep, apologise for that. Given, you know, ideally, it'd be nice to wait and have a special general meeting and give everyone time to absorb all of this information, but that's just going to string it out even longer and longer. And we think we've given this a fair crack. 2.5 years is a fair bit of consultation. So good comments. I think we got more down here. No open questions. Thank you. Good. Well, I think that's a great bunch of questions there. And we've also had, oh, here we go. Here's one more. Is there any thought, if the changes to BHA will require changes to the constitution of the member clubs, as we all refer to BHA in our constitutions? BHA doesn't have oversight of the club constitutions. That's something that is each club is constituted in the state where they reside. And whilst they are sympathetic to the BHA goals and objects, there is no requirement that we'll change any of those. I guess, given the changes each club wishes to make or doesn't wish to make, they may wish to review their constitutions on a case-by-case basis. Paul, we had specific advice on this, didn't we?
So ultimately what we did was we looked at particularly the relationship of our constitution to the member clubs. We've got requirements that we put on clubs around their behaviours, but we have no governance or control over those clubs in terms of the things that they do. So as a result, we've been quite clear about the messaging, and that is clubs choose to do what the clubs want to do. If you're operating congruent with your membership individually, with Barbershop Harmony Australia and those objects, then we're good to have everyone involved. If they're not operating incongruently with those objects, that would be a concern.
Yep, great. Thanks for the clarification there, Kai. You're probably right. Yes, I think timing-wise, we're restricted to the amount of time we've got to call and hold an SGM and an AGM at this point, and I'm not sure that we have time to do both. But great comment, thank you. All right, we'll give you a minute. If there's any more questions out there, type them on in. There's one. Anonymous, given the goal of the society to make membership open to all, is there prospect in the future to require clubs to honour this, require clubs to welcome everyone in order for the club to register with BHA? The answer is no. This is contained very clearly in the explanatory memorandum that there is absolutely no expectation. I'll read this again. The BHA National Council is taking this opportunity to once again stress there is no requirement for any member clubs to include or exclude any groupings that they wish to pursue should the proposed changes be endorsed by the membership. Male-only clubs can remain male-only clubs should they wish to do so. There is no expectation or anticipation that any clubs will be forced to change their current membership composition. These changes are simply being made to enable those who wish to support Barbershop in their communities in any way they wish to do so, to be supported by an inclusive association of people who share the joy of four-part harmony in the Barbershop style.
Just to clarify that as well, I think that it is possible within the scope of the changes that we may end up with female-only clubs, and the female-only clubs will be subject to exactly that same position. Should they wish to remain female-only, that is entirely their choice as a club.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Good one. All right. I think we'll give it a couple of moments to see if there's any final questions before we wrap it up. All right, nothing else coming in immediately. So just to clarify those next steps, what we'll do is we'll take some of this feedback. What we'll be doing soon is making sure that everyone has got the notifications regarding a call for motions and special motions for the AGM, as well as the nominations for members who wish to apply for a position on council back to us by the close-off date, which was specified in the email sent out on Friday. We will then be sending out the AGM pack, which is for all members to be able to have access to the old constitution, which has been marked up with the results of 2.5 years of work, a copy of the clean constitution or the rules, which is what it will look like moving forward should the membership vote to support the changes, a copy of the explanatory memorandum, which you'll be familiar with because I've just read most of that, and the minutes from the 2020 AGM. And that will be the normal things that come out with that notice of AGM. And you can see that probably coming out very soon. We've got 1 month until the AGM. And so, you will have plenty more time for being able to look at those and absorb those and ask, again, please ask any questions. You've got all of our email addresses available on the website. We're always here to answer questions and field comments. And like we've seen today, there may be some stuff that we haven't quite considered fully just yet. And we're really happy to take on board some of these fantastic suggestions. So thank you very much for your input on those. Good. Thank you, Council, for your volunteer work. Thank you, Anonymous. That's really lovely. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Great stuff. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I think we'll wrap up there. Again, contact details are on the website if you need more information. And please keep an eye out on your inboxes for the papers that will come ahead of the AGM, and check your spam filters too, because sometimes it goes there. And great, everyone, please stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.